Hello, and welcome to the Self-Healing Revolution, where ancient wisdom and modern science meet. I am your host, Paige Pierman, owner of Love Yourself, an Ayurvedic and wellness center based in Louisville, Kentucky, where I offer courses, coaching, and retreats. I put together this summit because I've learned over the years, after many years of my own healing, as well as many years working with my clients, that it takes a real full spectrum of the mind, body, spirit approach to healing. I think some people come at this from the physical, some from the mental, some from the spiritual. But through the years, I've found that it takes many guides along the way to lead you where you are. And I think each person finds their path. So with that, I am so excited to welcome you today to Chiraya. Chiraya is an author, spiritual self-realization catalyst, spiritual business consultant, and speaker. Chiraya Dharma is the creator of the Alchemy of Forgiveness Process, an online training course for energy clearing through the power of multi-dimensional forgiveness in ancestral lineages. Chiraya helps people realize the power of self-reflect to self-correct. She helps us envision the powerful, uplifting realities of a world where the health-aligned prosperity, awakened people, and ecological balance are the norm. She's been helping people for over 30 years as a coach, seer, leader, producer, and guide. She is also in Theta Healing, soul clearing, forensic healing, healing touch, traditional Thai yoga massage, the cure, and many other modalities. Chiraya is the author of numerous books and the creator of various media to help people comprehend deep spiritual truths, which will help them set themselves free as they progress on their spiritual journey. You can find more about her at chirayadharma.com, creative.chirayadharma.com, and createyourworld.academy, which will all be shared. Chiraya, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm so glad that we've crossed paths.
Thank you. Likewise. And Paige, I want to let you know that my name changed pronunciation a while back. So I actually pronounce it Chiraya now.
Chiraya.
And the only reason I mention it is because in the Vedic system, it actually changes the pronunciation based on your nakshatra. And this name had been came through for me, and then I sourced how to spell it, and it was correct for my nakshatra. And then as I dug deeper, I found that I was also meant to pronounce it and have people pronounce it Chiraya. And so it's obviously fine in this presentation, but I just wanted to presence that for everyone because I thought it was interesting also about the nakshatras and the whole Vedic system.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm glad that you shared the vibrational frequency of what is where you are in this moment. So I appreciate that. And so I'm ready to dive in right away. We were just talking before we started this recording that you had a dream last night. And so I thought, well, let's just flow with it. Let's share and see where we go today.
Yes. And so we're going to be talking a lot about forgiveness and its deeper meaning, and manifesting is directly connected to forgiveness. And if we don't learn how to forgive the past and clear the past out of our mind, body, spirit complex, out of our memory banks, out of our neural pathways, then we're destined to repeat whatever imprints are left in there. And so this little dream is about manifesting, but I just wanted to make that connection as we progress in the conversation to set the context. And so in the dream, I was, I have to access it here again.
Yeah.
Trying to get drinks, beverages for a group. And we were in a strange location. It was like some kind of very large complex. And the place where you have to go get the drinks seemed very far away and not accessible. And I was going to get these beverages for a number of our group. And I went to the end of the place where I would have to go through to go get those beverages. And it was only space. It was like, and this lady was in there and she didn't want to let me go get the beverages. And then I'm looking into like, just as if I was floating on a plane or something. It was like, wait, I know it's over there. What is going on? And then within the dream, I think I might have actually lucid dreamed, or I don't know if I woke up, but I in the dream, I literally was like, oh my gosh, I don't need this lady. I don't need to go anywhere. to manifest beverages. I can just manifest beverages.
I just have them. I don't have to go anywhere. I can just have these beverages.
Right. And that's really the penultimate of our conditioned mind and what it thinks. It thinks we have to go out in the world and do this thing and hammer it out in 3D and go through some kind of ordeal to go get what we want to get. And we have the power within us, I believe, ultimately to eventually literally manifest things out of thin air. But in the meantime, what the message is stop trying to hammer it out in 3D. First, go within. Imagine the beverages are already completely replenished for everyone, and they're absolutely there. And then allow the universe to provide the ways and means for it to show up.
I have a dream interpretation too for your dream with an Ayurvedic perspective. So like the beverages is water, and the water element in two ways, right? In physical form, water creates flow, it creates nourishment. It's the majority of what our physical body is made up of. But in Ayurveda, it's also the rasa, and the rasa is like the juice of life. It's like the sector, like the nectar. That's the word I'm looking for. It's like the nectar of life. So it's like, you don't necessarily have to go seek that nectar out externally. Like that nectar can be completely sourced from within. And that's really like what makes life juicy and succulent and passion and inner, it's like, it has a really, the beverage, the water element is deeply nourishing and rejuvenating and fulfilling. So I don't know, that was just like a deeper interpretation that I got from your dream. I don't know if that resonates or not.
Absolutely, that resonates, because basically it's saying, again, we don't have to go outside of ourselves. We keep thinking that this person out there, or this thing we're going to get, or this new job, or this change in the world, or this, whatever it is going to finally satisfy us. But it's never that which satisfies us, because it's when we're giving love that we feel love. It's when we're giving appreciation that we feel appreciation. It's when we're giving anything that we want to receive, when we're experiencing the energy of it within ourselves first, that's when it can show up and manifest in the world as the icing on the cake of this ever-flowing dance of Maya.
Yeah. It's really like the message that just keeps coming through from the summit, that the sourcing is divinely our divine right to have. And yet the Maya, the illusion, is what's keeping us from it. It's truly this illusion that we've created. And so, with that, like forgiveness brings us, I would assume from your perspective, back home, right? Back to source. Like when we're giving our power away, if we're hurt, if we're angry, if we feel victimized, that's giving that power away, rather, right? Is that how you interpret forgiveness? I really want you to start to dive into what forgiveness even means.
Yes, exactly. If we project the wrongdoing outside of ourselves and make it mean something, then it causes us to start thinking in a certain way about the situation, about life in general. And then this is part A. Part B is that it's not that the person who did the wrong didn't do the wrong.
Yeah.
They did do a wrong. They did do something, and it caused you pain. So it's not to diminish the worldly experience and the emotional body and what the person has gone through. It's important to move through that stuff and allow it to move through the system with a deep acknowledgement. However, the missing piece that we forgot is that the situation itself arose out of our conditioning, whether that was hidden from us or something we're aware of. And so the hidden conditioning that all of our earthly and worldly experiences come from could have been from a past life. They could have been from an ancestral lineage incident. They could have been from our early childhood conditioning, or they could have been through cultural conditioning of the world we're currently in. And so because of all this conditioning and buildup, it creates like slides in the subconscious mind that have to continue to play themselves out until we clear them.
Yeah, so pertinent right now too, because we're experiencing a lot of division in our culture today, in the sense that we're having to identify ourselves as something. And then when we identify ourselves as something and we give it a name, then we identify somebody else as something else than we are. Like, you could take politics, which I don't even want to talk about, but like, if I identify in this political party and you're that, then I'm different and separate from you. And there's such a need for forgiveness and humanity right now.
And the great teachings of yoga and the Vedic traditions, which we both have in common in our passion and our love for all things Vedic and Indic, actually point to realizing that I am not that. So the path of Raja Yoga is about analyzing and becoming self-aware of what you are and what you are not. It's like, I am not that chair. I am not that table. I am not a body. I am not a Republican. I am not a Democrat. I am not anything at all. Ultimately is what you come to realize through the path of Raja Yoga. So we're disidentifying with any mental construct of identity. Now, that doesn't mean
Which could be really hard, especially in this time. Like, we have people, gender identity, like, how do you identify your sex, which is a very controversial conversation, which is the opposite. And it could be very disorienting for somebody at first to say, wow, I don't need to be this, I don't need to be that, because I'm already whole. If I'm already whole and I'm already connected to you and you're connected to me and we are all one, then we don't have to separate ourselves through identification. And so that could be, if you're really attached to this concept of needing to be identified, that could be very unraveling for you, right? It could be an unraveling process, perhaps. And what do you think around that?
Well, that is a large and deep topic now, because first of all, we were born in a male or female body, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I love the fact that there are females and males, and that we get to experience the energy of that body. And I think it's a blessing to do that, to have a body and to experiencing the blessing of it. And what happens is, now this might sound strange, but I guess we're here. So
yeah.
Here's what has happened over time with the mystery schools. You have the light mystery schools and you have the dark mystery schools. Let's just say, and it's that duality thing that
the duality is there, and then even in the mystery schools, it's there.
And so the light mystery school will give a teaching that will help people, for example, overcome polarization by realizing that we all both have masculine and feminine within us. And it's a high vibrational teaching, and it talks about like even Shiva is shown as being masculine and feminine. Shiva also represents the neutron, so it's particle physics that it's actually talking about at a core level. But yin has a little bit of yang in it, and yang has a little bit of yin in it. And so that's a very high teaching. It's like, oh, we all have a little bit of each. But the dark path will take it and try to force people to identify and have parents help letting their children decide what gender they are at a young age. I mean, to me, that is a dark path. That is not a wholesome, positive. And it's not that any individual choosing whatever they choose from themselves would be bad or wrong in any way, but there's an agenda, actually. There's there's people who are trying to get people to do that.
Well, there's a loss of innocence. There's a loss of innocence involved when a child is supposed to go through. I mean, we're talking about the laws of nature, right? The laws of the universe, the laws of nature. They are the laws. You can't undo the laws of nature. The wind works the way wind works. Fire works the way fire works. These are laws of nature. You can't undo them. And there's a law of nature of childhood. There's an innocence of childhood that is innocent. And to sexualize a child before that growth period has evolved into its wisdom or its ability to use the prefrontal cortex or the higher executive functioning mind to make those decisions before the spiritual, emotional, and psychological and physical body is truly ready. So But yeah, there's just so much in our culture right now because we're talking about forgiveness. There's just so much of this labeling and separation. And when we do that, like we're not forgiving or compassionate or loving or kind to another human being.
Right. And so even this, so we can make a prayer today, for instance, that even though certain beings are agendaizing things that we find unwholesome and are concerned about, somehow, some way, the divine will find a way to create goodness and benefit out of this cultural calamity that we have going on at the moment.
Mhm.
And so we can hold that light for everyone and know that everyone who's caught up in any of those choices, that we can ask for their blessing and full clarity of their connection with source. And that may these experiences, though they may be contrasting or difficult, lead everybody back home some way, somehow. So that's our power of positive intention, that we can imagine that the force of benevolence in the universe is always going to have the upper hand, if you will, and somehow, some way, something good is going to come of all of that. And so that is kind of like a forgiveness. It's like, Creator, forgive them, they know not what they do. Or even if they do know what they do, they don't understand the full consequences of their actions. So
Well, I love what you were saying and speaking to further, because this just addresses that, as well as there's this hidden conditioning, whether it be child, ancestral, and yet that's really what the work is like being able to identify what that hidden conditioning is. But there's got to be a deep release and opening of energy through forgiveness.
yes, exactly. And so forgiveness, let's talk about it at a basic level. It's giving up the old for the new. And then at a deeper level, it's acknowledging that our subconscious mind, our deeper inner self, you might even say our God self, is the cause of everything, period. So there's everything, like think of it as a spectrum from us as a little human being and the conditioning we received in this and other lifetimes, causing what's going on in our sphere. And then the God within us, the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent power of the divine within us is the core cause of absolutely everything. And so when we acknowledge that, somehow, some way, I or my ancestors or me in another life or my culture seeded thoughts and feelings into my being without me even necessarily being aware of it. And those thoughts and feelings led to more thoughts, more feelings, which caused me to take a natural action. So karma is action. So we're acted out of our conditioning. And that is a very normal feeling. Like once you learn how to ride a bike, you just get on the bike and you ride it. Once you imprint yourself for having an upgrade in your prosperity or your health, you just naturally take the steps that cause that to happen without even knowing how. If you have a bad habit, you've been practicing that and thinking about it and acting on it for a long time. So that's what we call compounded momentum in the nature of the law, whether it's perceived as a good thing or perceived as a negative thing that you want to overcome, the same principle is underneath it. And by the same principle, we can also leverage the power of our attention and intention to choose to clear the imprints and energies that have gone before us, that we've had before in the past. So all that of error which has preceded me in my waking state is no part of me. I live in the light of God's perfect love. I'm God's child and God is perfect, is one prayer that someone can say. And it's also, please get to the root core cause of this pattern and analyze, resolve, heal, cleanse, clear, and clean it everywhere. And so that command is very potentized. It's saying everywhere, all time, space, and dimension, all concepts of time, all levels, all layers, all hidden layers. Everywhere, past, present, future, we're asking that omnipotent power within us to cleanse, clear, clean, and heal and get to the root core cause of these patterns. And then it has to start changing because we've used the same power and the same principle by which we created something in the first place, which is the power of our attention and our focus.
Our attention, our focus. Yeah, so powerful. And again, you're steeped in the yogic and Vedic philosophies, but there's some scars or they're vrittis, they're deep ingrained patterning. So some of the greatest, most important soul level work that we could possibly do is to work with these some scars, these vrittis or these patterning, you could call them, without using Sanskrit, you just could call them oh, what are other words for patterning? I think these words that are in Sanskrit have so many layers of meaning. That's why I use them. But I guess it's where people get stuck, right? They get trapped, they get stuck.
That action has become natural and habituated. Like we react instead of respond. We're reacting from the patterning, and when we pause to respond instead of react, we have to actually practice that, because every particle of our being wants to react in the habituated way, but we know if we react in that habituated way, like getting angry at somebody or whatever, it's only going to lead to trouble. It's not going to lead to the beneficial outcome, and we're going to be stuck in the loop again and just deep in the hole.
That's it. It's a loop. And so that loop is so hard. That's why I think it's like the deepest work you could possibly ever do, because that loop it's a cyclical thing that just keeps coming and returning to itself. And yet it's like when you're in the loop, you don't necessarily understand how to like shoot out of the loop, So, but you're saying if the intention is there, then that's where the energy will go. It will flow. If you stay with the intention, then that is where the work will reveal itself.
Yes, and there are numerous different practices and ways to do that. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm reminded of a glass casserole dish that I had to clean the other day. I learned that if you put baking soda and vinegar in, let it sit, then you can take a lemon and scrub it and it'll just start coming off. Now, that worked really well for the first casserole. For the second one, that stuff was baked on so hard. I had to literally soak it 3 times, then wash it in the dishwasher, then scrub it, and then get my fingernail to finally get this crud off of there. So if we think about lifetimes and ancestral lineage and what you're talking about, a very deep imprinted neural pathways, deep samskaras, deep residue, it takes a little bit more doing to undo that, because of the depth of the rivulet in your brain from the neural pathway, from the samskara, and the tendency of energy to flow in that certain direction, because that's what that is. That samskara is literally a crevice in the brain created by energy flowing down a certain pathway over and over and over again, just like water flowing in a river. So we're back to the water again, right? The beverages. As that happens, then it causes us to naturally act in that direction. So we have to, that's why it feels like effort. It may feel challenging, it may feel difficult, but they say it's the best action we could ever take, is to continue to rehabituate ourselves toward the desired pattern instead of these old patterns.
You just gave me, I was thinking of something, an image, and I was thinking of the Grand Canyon. It's a beautiful, beautiful canyon. You look at the Grand Canyon and you see the stream below, and you could almost think about like one of these patterns could be as big as the Grand Canyon, and your life's work may be to get out of that one way, that one defined, ingrained pathway, through neuroplasticity. But also I was just speaking, I did an interview she owns a company for tuning forks, the biofield, and she was talking about the electrical body having memory. And in Ayurveda, we work with the physical, the pranic body, the breath body, you know all this. And then we have the mind sheath, the breath sheath, and then we get to, more the astral sheath, the subconscious mind. And that layer is deep, where the stuff kind of hides, and that it doesn't always seem clear. Like there's like habitual patterning, and yet people can be conscious or unconscious of these patterns. Like when you're talking about forgiveness, you could be very unconscious of the things that you need to even forgive,
Yes.
or even awareness around forgiveness.
It takes time for people to get these deeper awarenesses because of all the conditioning, but that is part of the process of spiritual growth and awakening. And that's why in ancient India, the guru system and the prayers and the mantras and the meditations and all of the practices that were done were literally all towards that aim, because once you clear the residue, there's nothing left but the truth, which is you and God are one. We are at one, atoned with the divine within us in this mysterious, amazing, beautiful life that is also illusory because it's ever changing. So it helps us learn to practice the art of detachment. And it doesn't mean, so there's detachment, but then there's aloofness. We're not trying
There's a difference there.
we're trying to be, we're learning non-attachment in a loving, compassionate way without being arrogant and aloof, and so because the arrogant aloof part would be an ego reaction, whereas the detachment is a natural result of comprehending the mechanics of life itself and the universe and how energy actually works.
Well, it's more high vibrational, like, right? Like aloofness is not seeing that oneness. Like you're not caring, you're not compassionate, you're not empathetic. Whereas that non-attachment, you can still stay loving and kind and compassionate, empathetic without having to feel that you have control over someone or something, or
because we look out and we know that that person experiencing whatever we're becoming detached from, or ourselves and our own patterning, came about through conditioning. There's nothing wrong here. There's no one to punish. It happened naturally through time, through compounded momentum in the nature of the law. This is all that is as it is because it is. This is what Divine Mother energy said through me in one of the books. All that is as it is because it is. Somehow, some way, it manifested through eons of time, ways we have even no idea about. And yet here it is. So what are we going to do? Resist it? So that's where the other teaching is non-resistance. So we become non-resistant to what is, but the magic is when we become non-resistant to what is, whether it's our own feeling of anger or something else, then the electrical system can reset and discharge the old energy that was making us upset about it. So we can then go about the business of actually focusing our thought in a new direction to create something new.
yeah. Yeah, there's so much that even again that you wouldn't even see the resistance, because it can hide itself very well. It can obscure, because again, if you look at Maya or illusion, it's obscured and you can't, if you're in the illusion, you can't always see that.
That's right.
You can't see it for what it really is.
Sometimes it takes years, like in my process, being in my 50s at this point, it takes years to realize it's like, oh, that's why that person was upset with me. Like decades later, it's like, they finally did it. From their point of view, I completely understand it now. Whereas in the moment, it was just like, woo, we just went about being our natural self and we don't understand why or how something offended or hurt someone else. But then our own awareness grows and we can finally be like, oh, I get the joke now. Finally, it's like, oh, please help that person forgive me. And then we can do that, both ways. We do it. Please help them forgive me for whatever I did or didn't do that caused them pain or suffering, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, with intent or completely by default of my programming. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you. And so we do that ourselves. We do that also with their ancestral lineage, them in past lives, them in this life. And then we also ask for them to forgive us if there's something that someone has done to us. And what this ends up doing is it starts detangling. It's like a detangler. It's like cleaning up the knots and the tangles and the entanglement of different souls, which has caused repeated patterns of suffering. So we're going in and we're cleaning the slate, but we need to get as specific as possible and bring in all the elements that might be affecting the pattern. And so that's the forgiveness training that I'm doing, helps us walk
Right.
through that.
Because it's not just that you need to forgive, like I need to forgive X, Y, or Z, but it's also asking forgiveness of another human being, which you think, okay, if I ask for forgiveness, if somebody's hurt me, then there's that whole process of me releasing that energy that I'm holding towards that other person. But yet there can be a lot of trapped energy in how you hurt somebody, the reversal of that, right? And then you have trapped energy there too.
Yep, it's
There's
all
still suffering when whether you were hurt or the victim or somebody else was the victim, there's still trapped energy there. And so it has bi-directional awareness.
for sure, because we didn't necessarily mean to hurt someone, but because of their conditioning, they took it a certain way, or because of what they were wanting and projecting onto us, they needed us to show up in a certain way, and we weren't able to at that moment. And maybe we could have if we'd been in a different space, but that's not what happened. All of it occurred because of our conditioning and their conditioning. So that's what, forgive them, Father, Mother, God. They know not what they do. We literally are
They know not what they do. And there can be somebody could be hurt, and like you said, they know not what they do, but it may not been their purpose or their direction to be of service to you. Like, you could be hurt by somebody, and yet they don't know what they do, but yet they didn't really necessarily do anything wrong because they were following their path. They were doing what was right by them.
our beliefs, our thought forms, our desires were disappointed by someone else's behavior. So ultimately, right, there's nothing wrong. It felt wrong. It felt incorrect. Maybe an agreement was broken. Now, agreements and contracts are a very profound topic, and also the basis of human interaction. So sometimes we have to break agreements, and that feels awkward to people as well. But that's where, and then if someone's really,
But that breaking that agreement could be deeply healing for somebody who said yes when they meant no. They said yet, like, people don't have the power, the center in themselves they commit to something. And then they find when they dig deep within their heart, whether it be a job or a relationship or a friendship, this isn't really aligned. And yet I said yes to a commitment or something like that. And then there's pain or hurt. But like you said, that contract has to be broken because it's not aligned to that person's path. Like, let's say they took a job and they found out that it really wasn't resonating with their soul. They had to leave it. And then that person's, without an employee, something as simple as that, that contract, sometimes it's run its course, it's served its time. And that can be very difficult.
it can. But these are the things that we're detangling. And the contract itself might have been instigated through a past life or through something in the ancestral lineage.
Yeah.
And sometimes really seriously negative contracts. So you have to break them, obviously, because they're not no part of that in this lifetime. However, what starts happening as we mature and we learn these skills is we become aware. Well, what am I agreeing to? Am I able to fulfill that? I don't want to unnecessarily have to break something. So we become more conscious and cognizant of what we say yes to, what we say maybe to, and what we say no to, so that we can avoid causing any more pain and suffering in the future.
Yeah, this contract thing is very interesting because I think there's a lot of unspoken agreements that get made. They're not even ever spoken orally, and yet they get made, and that's where that kind of unconscious, like, deeper stuff gets unearthed, because it's not necessarily, it's like communication is, they say 80 to 90% of communication is unspoken, and yet people have a deep energetic sense of what's happening in their comfort level or not.
Yes. And if you think about the types of contracts that happened in cultures still today, even, and in the past, like, let's say an arranged marriage or something like that. Now that child has gone into an agreement that their parents made for them, and they didn't have a choice in that culture. and all of a sudden now they're with not the right person, so it becomes, and then they feel guilty because they want to break the agreement, and they feel like they shouldn't have to and want to be a good child to their parents and all that. So it gets complicated and compounded. But just thinking about what are the cultural beliefs and agreements that we make, some of which we are good with and some of which we're not. But even those can be worked on by individuals to clear, cleanse, clean, and heal those no longer functioning ancestral contracts and karmas can come to an end and a conclusion through one individual, benefiting the entire lineage.
Yeah.
Not, I mean, like, who knows? Sometimes arranged marriages might be perfect for people. I'm not like trying to judge it. There's just like,
yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of Indian clients, in my Ayurvedic practice, and I have some that have talked about the great benefits of when, they looked at the astrology and looked at the energy and really studied, what was most energetically aligned for someone. They've worked really well, but I think sometimes they're loosey-goosey, and it's like they're looking at not the whole person, the whole mind, body, spirit of the person, but it's just by relation or socioeconomic status, or but also like not necessarily giving the individual the choice, like, okay, this might all line up in the stars, but are we seeing this like play out in the physical realm? Like it has to have that too, it's like, if it's anything that feels forced without our permission, again, it's an agreement that is being made, a contract, whether it's really truly being integrated.
One of my teachers in my 20s told me, we have to be careful how much force we use every day. So when we try to force others to our will, we're literally creating karma at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating an opposite equal reaction that might not feel fun on the receiving end when it comes back around. So, culturally, we're just becoming more aware of this. And the codes, like you said, the codes of actually a parent caring for their child enough to study with a great, wise astrologer and look at the dynamics and understand their child and literally think about and feel into what kind of foundation that child can have with a mate that's completely compatible, and the child is in on it, and they seek the child's agreement, then it could be a very high, and I'm sure it was in the ancient days when we were in the golden age experiences of yore, be very marvelous and amazing and such a blessing to have that high level of teaching and codes available. And then it degrades over time because people forget, and then
it degrades. And then I think it's just like, okay, this is just like, it's like, instead of being a full picture, right? Looking at all the different elements of all the layers of someone's being, right, and their own feelings around it. Then it could be really diluted into just, I don't want to say half-assed, but like it's not really, the whole integration of it hasn't occurred, or so. Yeah.
And so again, we give up judgment for comprehension. And so when we comprehend the mechanics of this, it allows us to not be upset about things, because that upset energy is an emotional energy, and emotion, energy and motion is fuel for further creation. So if we, all the manifesting teachers say, if you can imagine and visualize something happening, and you get the energy of it in your body, and you find the enthusiasm, and you fill it with lots of love and energy, then things start happening really, really fast. Likewise, though, it doesn't mean that the God power within you stops working at that moment when you're angry and upset and charging up things with your negative energy. It's now you're fueling the negative thing because all of your focus is on it, and there's this huge emotional reaction to it. That's how we're literally continuing the karmic cycle and feeding it more fuel. So that is why the great yogis and sages and wisdom teachers say, like, temper your anger, like work on these things, become the still point within, become the creator, harness your energies, like learn how to master your energies, because you don't literally know what you're doing to yourself right now by acting out in these ways.
Yeah. So true. Yeah. Like the still point is so fascinating to me. It's like we think that like you were saying, the beverage, that there's this movement that's external outside of the self, but really the power's in that still point. It's in that there's more movement sometimes in the stillness. I mean, I found this to be true. I used to think I always had to have a reaction to something that somebody said to me. I thought, oh, okay, if they say this, then I need to have like, it's like a call and response. And then when I started like sitting sometimes with like, okay, what if I didn't respond? What if I just sat with this information and allowed it to follow its full course? Like let it like play itself truly out. And then I said, when I actually sat with my still point, like, because we say reactive things all the time. You hear this, you react with this. Like it's not, you haven't been in your still point. You haven't really sat with your center or your heart or your soul. And so I used to find myself to be very quickly reactive. And then it was like, well, what if you gave yourself permission to not react? What if you gave yourself permission to just sit with this information and allow all the, like you talk about karma, like all the things that need to come as a result of whatever happened. And then when you're in this place of the ultimate stillness, you can come from your most powerful place, because you're probably going to come from your higher self versus your reactive lower vibrational self.
The Native Americans call it stopping the world.
Mm.
And so, yeah, and also if you think about
How powerful, like literally, yeah, like that's how powerful it is.
yeah, and so when we go back to our breath, when we do the anapanasati meditation or other things like that to quiet our breath, where we're just noticing the sensation right under our nostrils, and putting our one pointed focus on that, what's happening in that moment is we're not thinking about anything else. And thought is the creative instrument. And so when we still our thoughts, the monkey mind is not being allowed to go and create more havoc in the direction that's already being created. Right. And then from that place, now we can be more intentional about what we want to use our creative thought power and imagination power for, instead of just allowing the conditioning to have its way with us.
Yeah. And, you know, I work with my clients and I'll work with like different breath work that I feel, because in Ayurveda, like you prescribe it to what's going on with the doshas, what's going on with the elements, the qualities. And I'll say, you know, like sometimes like, you know, when people are really in stressed environments, to just really truly come to that, back to the breath. Because immediately it centers you, it immediately pulls you back to the heart space. And this is trying to rule, and it knows not what it does.
Right? It literally, it's not meant to be the ruler. So that's why we say, allow the mind to rest in the heart. And then, you know, we connect with the source through the heart, through that love sense feeling and that deep connection with our soul spark within us. And allow that to be the guide. That's the still small voice that we can't hear when our monkey mind is just running all over the place. And it's, you know, it's a certain kind of arrogance. So of course in Ayurveda, we talk about rajas, tamas, and sattva. And so the rajas is when we're super passionate about something, we're just charging ahead, and we don't really give a crap about anybody else, what they're thinking or saying or anything. And then the tamas part of us is when we're acting out of complete ignorance. We're not aware of the situation. We're in the darkness like that. And then the sattva is when we're practicing listening, and we're practicing being more peaceful. We're practicing being more kind. And so they all, you know, the system of Ayurveda and Vedic wisdom is very ancient, deep, and very carefully thought through with this human situation that we have and we find ourselves in. So the tools that are there are very powerful for self-reflection.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about forgiveness, and it was actually in the back of my mind when we were talking about Maya, the illusion, and the subconscious. When there's the tamasic inertia part of ourselves wants to be behind the veil. It wants the illusion in place because there's a sense of safety in not admitting or not allowing or, you know, owning what's happening. So it can just stay inert. It doesn't have to move. It doesn't have to do anything. And then the Rajas part is, like you said, it's like it will attack, it will let you know, it will show anger, it will be very, very passionate. And we have both spectrums with forgiveness. Like there's one part that's like all that energy is being externalized with anger or passion or outside of ourselves. And then there's like the tamasic part that just doesn't move at all, doesn't want to even acknowledge what's happening. And in forgiveness, like there's a part of looking at all that turmoil, and in both instances, the turmoil can be just inside and internalized and not moving at all. It's just stuck so severely. It can cause depression and complete inability to make decisions or move forward or to manifest, like you talked about. There's no manifestation when we're expending our energy aimlessly, like in a Rajasic state. Then it's aimless, and you can't bring that energy forth in a manifestation way. And if you're in that tamasic energy and you can't forgive and you're just stuck, that energy can't move. You can't bring forth what you want to manifest either.
I like to talk about the hot potato. So there's a hot potato in the room, there's an emotional charge, and your choices are to throw it at the other person, to hold it and feel burned, or to drop it. And so the throwing it at the other person would be the tamasic, the holding it, the repressing of it. So maybe that could be the holding it in the hand in one sense, or the drop. Maybe let's call it the dropping it. Let's call the tamasic the dropping it, like would drop it within and push it down and deny that it's there. And what we're left with is, if we're holding it in our hands and we feel that burn is the electrical charge actually departing from the mind body spirit complex. So we're not pushing it down and hiding it, and we're not trying to project it on another person. Then we have to just sit with it and allow it to move through the energy system, which is that, the practice of energy clearing has to do with that. And there's many, many modalities, many of which I've worked with over the years, and I'm sure that you do as well.
That's such a great metaphor. My goodness. I call it sitting in the fire. Like, granted, like, it's like, okay, I know this. It's like, you're not ignoring it, nor are you choosing to act in a negative way or create more karma around it. You're literally just sitting in the fire and you're letting it burn away what needs to burn away. And that's like the most uncomfortable place to be, like, okay, I'm going to sit in the fire and allow what needs to burn away. But it's a clearing, it's a purification.
It is. It's a puja for sure. And as we do that and allow that to happen, the blessings are great. But that's, when all the practices, the meditation, all these things, like if you sit still for a while and all your mind stuff starts coming up, it might feel uncomfortable because you're aware of it now. And it's like, okay, I choose to not put my focus on that. And the habit, the habituated mind wants to, gets adrenaline or whatever from putting the focus on it. So when we stop, it may feel even chemically uncomfortable in the body, mentally, emotional, spiritually, physically, chemically. All those things might feel a little discomfort, but what ends up happening as a result of that is now it's cleaned. We've cleaned the pattern, and now that pattern doesn't have to repercuss and reoccur in situations in our life. In the loop, we get out of the loop, basically. We get off of the wheel.
Yeah, it's so profound. You're familiar with an Ayurveda. We have Panchakarma, and it's a mind, body, spiritual purification. And, part of that, of course, is there's a physical through diet and lifestyle, which is what most people, I think, believe Panchakarma is. But in the process of Panchakarma, there's a sense of stillness. Like, you're not in your daily life. You're not in your community. You pull yourself out of your environment to be in a place of healing where all the rajas outside of yourself is not there. And then you literally have to not only do the physical, but the meditation, the breath work, sitting in the stillness, and a lot of like uncomfortable, like every time I've done a detox, and I don't just look at it from a physical perspective, but from emotional, spiritual perspective, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's bubbling up this time? Like, what is coming out that I didn't know was there? But it's sitting in the fire. But then there's this beautiful, on the other side of that experience is what we talk about sattva sattva. It's this sense of calm and clarity and focused and rejuvenation and deep layers of energy, because your ojas is strengthened, your deep vitality is restored, your tejas, your fire is strong, your prana, your life force energy is strong. But what you're saying is, like, by going through this process of forgiveness, on the other side of it, there's so much like liberation and freedom.
And even miracles occur. Like sometimes people who you just did a forgiveness exercise would like call immediately and say, hey, how you doing, or something. Or a tangled, deep, dark situation might start to unwind itself. Or some habit or pattern or illness or something will start to disappear. And so we call them miracles, but it's actually just a result of how the universe works. And that's what the ancient mystery schools have brought forward in various ways. Is like, oh, there's reasons, there's a spiritual science to this stuff. It's not, we can call it a miracle, we can call it a mystery, but there's reasons why things happen. And so starting to get that comprehension again gives us a lot of peace. And you were also reminding me of the yugas. And so just let's remember that we've been building these patterns for a very long time, depending on which cycle you're talking about. Are you talking about since the last reset, or the last two resets, 5 and 12,000 years ago or so? Or are you talking 26,000 year cycle? Or are you talking the 75,000 year cycle? Or are you talking like all the way back from the beginning of the universe, which is billions of years? Now, like, these patterns have had a while to build. So that was the out breath of Brahma going out into the cycle with new energy and probably a lot more awareness and like a lot more connection and remembrance of these codes and this knowledge. And we built beautiful things, and society was harmonious, and all kinds of wonderful things happen. And then slowly over time in the cycle, we fall into levels of forgetfulness, and we get all the way down to the deep dark hole to where what they call the Kali Yuga, where it's chaos. And then because everyone has forgotten who they are and how they create, so we've created all kinds of crazy stuff without wanting to, which is basically kind of what we're talking about here today. But then on the in breath of Brahma, so now we're heading back homeward. So we're starting to remember the codes, we're starting to remember the wisdom, we're starting to integrate the healing, we're starting to remember who we are. And so the journey is going towards the healing. And that's why there's so many of us who are activated to do the clearing work and the self-awareness work, and to continue this deep inner practice that will set us free from all that we've created in the past.
I just love what you just said so much, for so many reasons, because that's really like the point of this summit, the self-healing revolution, is to help people remember that what they forgot, to allow them to trust themselves, to, the word energetic sovereignty has come up, so many people have spoken about this in different manners. But what I love what you said is that there are codes, there's deep, deep wisdom, there's laws of nature there. We can reinvent it and give it a modern name or a modern spin, but there's some deep ancestral wisdom that I believe people like you and myself are trying to unearth, or like we're like archaeologists and we're going in and digging it up, and we're like, look what I found, look what I'm ready to share with you. And that's that remembering. And I have a question, like, where do you feel that we're collectively at? Like, if we call Yugas here, and like, this is the lower, it's hard to show on the screen. Like, this is the lower point. We're coming out of it. Do you feel that there's like any speeding up at this time, or just the people that need to be here now will? Or do you feel like, when the word ascension comes up, like there's a lot of people really awakening up to this knowledge now, coming back to the wisdom teachings? Where are your thought patterns on where we're at collectively?
Yeah, well, we are definitely on the upswing, and I'm getting chills as you're saying this, so maybe a message is going to come through for us about that. And basically what I'm hearing is, don't give up hope. All is well. Everything is building toward the reunification of the human families and the awakening to our higher essence. Now, the contrast is in high state, but they say it's darkest before the dawn. So everything that's been dark and hidden and suppressed, just like in our own personal process,
Is in the collective as well.
Up and out for us to see in order for us to choose again. And many, many, many of us have been praying and meditating and visualizing for many years also for the healing of humanity, for the awakening of humanity, for the healing of the earth and the restoration of goodness, wholeness, oneness, and healing on the planet and in our human civilization. And so in order for those things to actually transpire, first, what has to happen is a cleansing, clearing, cleaning of all the stuff that doesn't belong there. Mm-hmm. And we can also start in our wisdom to reflect. It's like, oh, a balanced civilization works like this, and here's why. And it's like we can see it more clearly when we see the grave dysfunction that's going on. We're like, wait a second, what if we had actually conscious thinking, loving, compassionate people in positions of power? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Mm-hmm. There's so much forgiveness there. Gosh, there's so much forgiveness. When we talk about like victim consciousness or what's happening, we could say, whatever you want to describe it as, it exists. You can call it conspiracy theory, you can call it darkness, you can call it low vibrational energy. But there is great destruction happening. And like you said, what if we could all just really come from this high vibrational place of forgiveness and free ourselves?
It's not to make those bad things right. It's remembering that it's our birthright and power to steer.
But it gives so much power to them when we stay angry. And during COVID, I really sat with all of it. And I thought, I don't want to give my power away to any of this. And I just started saying, if I wanted to create heaven on earth, during that time period, because I was like, gosh, I would get really disturbed with what I was feeling in the collective. It was really disturbing me. And I just sat with it one day and I said, if I want to create, or I want to experience heaven on earth, then I have to model that behavior within myself. And so I was like, instead of giving my power away and going down the rabbit hole or having this really strong charged belief system, I know that I have the power within. And if I want to create the life of what heaven on earth would look like, then it's up to me to model that behavior, which is like, the summit, like share the wisdom teachings, unearth it, and give that gift to humanity and just be a vehicle. And I only know how to do that. I only know how to be able to model that which I want to experience.
Exactly. And so it's not that those things aren't happening. It's not that some of us shouldn't take certain action when we're called to do that to solve specific problems that are happening. There's a lot of action that needs to be taken and a lot of action that is being taken. Mm-hmm. And there are brave warriors and heroes of all kinds emerging to help us in that. And each one of us is needing to find the hero within that does what you say, instead of just getting trampled by the energy, to stand up and do your part, give your gift, shine the light where you are called to shine the light. And through each of us taking up the mantle of our work like that, and like if everyone on the planet is vibrating with higher consciousness and loving kindness and compassion, then where's the room for any of this dysfunction? It doesn't have a place to exist.
It doesn't have power. It's given so much power. Yeah.
And so that's that very interesting dance of duality and polarity and us finding the balance within ourselves so that we can honor the fact that we have been given dominion over the earth plane. And so that's in the other set of scriptures, the Judeo-Christian scriptures. It certainly talks about that in the Vedas too, but it's spoken of plainly in the Judeo-Christian scriptures. God gave us dominion over the earth. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
Dominance and control, or did it mean you are the master of the elements? If you want to manifest beverages, you can manifest.
We're back to the beverages. You can manifest beverages.
Manifest whatever you want. You have dominion over the elements themselves. I mean, we can even modify the weather like there's Agnihotra, that one of the practices of in Ayurveda and even what is it called, biodynamic gardening was adopted. Agnihotra, it will literally stabilize and balance the weather. And so maybe there's people doing that in a negative way at this point, but we can do that. That's who we are. It's our birthright, and everything in the negative society has been designed to suppress that information or have people forget that simple knowledge. But we don't have to react, make it wrong. Maybe there's some forgiveness. Maybe you have some emotional charge. I've processed a little anger through that whole thing. I must say, I had to face that, and
yeah, we all did collectively. Like, I don't think any of us, I say during that period, none of us were untouched. Not one human being on earth was not touched by what happened.
right. It was face. That's why I call it kind of graduate level stuff here.
Yeah, for sure. So we're coming up on our hour. I just want to end with a couple of thoughts. One, I wanted to say that that's really, like, you touched on something that's near and dear to my heart, which is the great elements, like earth, air, fire, water, ether. Ayurveda teaches us to become a master of the elements, not only physically, but emotionally and energetically as well. But we're coming up on the hour, and I want you to share before we end about your forgiveness program, and just tell everybody a little bit about what you're offering.
Thank you. I certainly will be happy to do that. So I've got many things that I do. People can find on my website at chirayadharma.com, and the academy is at createyourworld.academy. You can get to the courses either way, and the forgiveness training, if you go to createyourworld.academy, I believe if you just click the button called courses on there, at the link at the top, it will show the forgiveness course, and it's a very deep multidimensional energy clearing course, and there's worksheets and tools for people to use to actually do the detangling of these deep, dark, dangerous, difficult, challenging, anything from the most extreme to even just like, this bothers me and I want to clear it, or this is really messing with my life.
Yeah.
You use these worksheets to make sure that you get every single aspect of what karma might have been coming from, so that we clean it, heal it, forgive it, and let it be done and complete everywhere. So it's a really mighty course. It's a lot of fun. I've designed it with videos as well as worksheets and downloads, written downloads for people. And so, yeah, if anybody feels called to dive in over there, they certainly can do that, and also communicate with me. I also have some other free things on the website, and I do offer private sessions and one-on-one coaching as well. So they are welcome to contact me if they feel so called. And there's also a lot of books and media that are also visible on the site there.
Thank you, Chiraya, so much. And I'm letting everybody offer a free gift. Would you like to tell them what you have in store?
I think.
Yeah, you have the ebook. I have the ebook. It's fine. I'll share the link for everybody. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, I have a number of free gifts. So I think it's the free goodies that are at the link that you have there.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.